With Phil Therien, lead design manager, and Matt Schmitz, director of animation at Twisted Pixel Games, and we're here to talk Marvel's Deadpool VR. So, before we get started, just wanted to comment on the background that both of you have
Mhm.
going on. I love it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Mine's actually from we were at the Gamescom video game conference in Cologne,
Mm-hmm.
Germany over the summer, and so this was the artwork that we had all around of our booth and exhibit that we when we were showing Deadpool. So at the end of the convention, we were actually allowed to take some of the art home back with us. So
Oh,
that's what I chose to take with me. Phil has a piece too.
sweet.
I have
Nice.
the digital version on right now, but yeah,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a piece of that Gamescom art.
Very, very cool. So brief intros just to kick us off. If you could tell me your role on the game, and then your first or favorite encounter with the Merc with the Mouth.
You want to start, Matt?
Sure, yeah. My role, I'm Matt Schmitz, animation director on Marvel's Deadpool VR. My first encounter with the Merc with the Mouth, well, I was a comics guy as a kid.
Uh huh.
I loved comics, Marvel comics. I had a lot of X-Men, so I had X-Force comics, and so I got introduced to Deadpool pretty early on. I was actually
Nice.
a really big Wolverine fan when I was a kid. I,
Yeah.
I
I
had a
mean,
lot
aren't
of
we
Wolverine
all?
comics. Yeah, right. But over the years, I matured into more of a Deadpool fan as the years went on, and as you know, it was really fun to see Deadpool develop this kind of cult following of people that just love the Merc with the Mouth because he's just got such a great sense of humor, and it's just such a fun superhero. So yeah, I mean, it was super exciting to be able to work on a game for Deadpool. Of course, it's like a dream, so it was really awesome.
Nice. And how about you, Phil?
So I'm Phil. I'm the lead design manager on Marvel's Deadpool VR. Um, it's kind of interesting with Deadpool. So I've always liked Deadpool. I would say this is about 7 years ago. I was working on a different Marvel game, and in an interview, I was asked if I could make a game about any Marvel hero, like who would I pick? I
Mm-hmm.
said Deadpool with no hesitation. People can look that up. That's a real thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of always been something I've wanted to do. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's been a hero that I've always liked. I love his sense of humor, and just the way that he fights. For me, everything lined up to make an awesome video game. So it's just always been something I've always wanted to do.
Awesome. Speaking of bringing Deadpool into a game space, this isn't Marvel's first entry into VR. Obviously, there's Iron Man, there was Marvel's Powers United VR back in the Rift days, but to the best of my knowledge, this is the first time that Deadpool will be in a VR game. What does it feel like to be able to bring that to fruition?
So I touched a little bit on it before, but Deadpool's such an interesting character. The way that he fights changes all the time. It depends what kind of mood he's in or what situation he finds himself in. He could be dancing, doing martial arts, throwing weapons. There's a tremendous amount of freedom and creativity in what he's doing. And if you think of traditional video games, it's very expensive to do all of that in animation and in systems. But in
Mm-hmm.
VR, the player effectively provides a lot of those animations because you're moving your own arms, you're basically combining moves in a way that feels natural to you. So if you kind of combine those things together, VR becomes this really interesting medium for Deadpool. That's one of the reasons why we thought it was such a cool media to do the game on. I'm sure Matt can expand on that, but for us, wanting to have a game that really espouses freedom and tells players like, do what you want. We're gonna say yes to you. You want to
Mm-hmm.
throw your own limbs as a weapon, do it. Like, there's so much opportunity. It's just a really really cool platform to make a Deadpool game.
Yeah, Phil's
Awesome.
right. The level of freedom you have with a character like Deadpool, I mean, you can get as creative as you want with combat systems and how you're going to go after enemies and also how you're going to interact with the environment using parkour, wall running and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Deadpool's, really fun character to be able to use for those types of things. I think something else that I really like about being able to be in VR with Deadpool is you get to be Deadpool and his sense of humor and the writing we put into the game. Neil Patrick Harris being the voice of Deadpool, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
hear him cracking jokes all the time, making comments that are going to break the fourth wall and do exactly what Deadpool does. And so the
Right.
narrative of the game is just a ton of fun to follow with a character like Deadpool.
Awesome. And then the game was originally announced at Summer Game Fest just this past June, but how long has the title been in development for, all told?
We've been working on the game since Twisted Pixel was acquired by Meta, so
Mm-hmm.
it's been about 4 years since we started on that project. Um, and it's so exciting to finally have people see all that work that we've been putting together. People have been seeing some of our main campaign levels. They've seen recently a little bit of Mojo World, which is kind of a fun
Hmm.
interlude that we go to between
Hmm.
chasing Marvel villains. So definitely a lot of work has been going into making Deadpool. It's a full-fledged campaign game that rivals, I think, a lot of what you'd expect out of, a big high development like campaign narrative game. Like we have a lot of content. It's a big game.
About how many hours roughly would you say the playthrough would take?
So we haven't gotten our final count just yet because people are still
Hmm.
kind of playing through it and tuning things, but I would say it's comparative to what you'd expect out of a comparative like campaign narrative single player game. It's not short by any
Hmm.
stretch of the imagination. It's a lengthy game. I mean, we
Nice.
have a really good amount of content.
Yeah, and we have unlockables and content you can revisit in the game as well.
That's
So
right.
you can
Oh,
upgrade
sweet.
weapons, you can, upgrade the loadout for your character, different skins and things you can wear. So yeah, there we did work into the game a lot of options that you can go back and continue to enjoy the game even after you've played through the narrative the first time.
Yeah, in
Awesome.
fact, our replayability lets you play
Hmm.
with Deadpool variants, and they have their own narrative throughout the game.
Ah,
So, if, for example, you're starting a game over as Lady Deadpool, she has her own set of completely unique lines and jokes
Hmm.
that she's going to be saying throughout the game. It makes playing the game multiple times really entertaining, especially if you like Deadpool and that kind of humor.
yeah.
You get a completely different take on the story, which is really interesting.
Oh, that's awesome. So any anecdotes, either something funny or unusual or just really memorable from that 4 year development process that stands out to you?
For me, we had a lot of fun with punishing Deadpool as a character. So on the
Uh-huh.
animation side of things, Deadpool doesn't really die, right? But,
Right.
in a video game, if you take enough damage, you have to sort of die, right? So we
Right.
got to have fun with how Deadpool can be dismembered and how he can be sort of taken out by the people that he's fighting. And motion capture was a big part of our animation pipeline on this game. And so we
Mm-hmm.
even got to carry some of that in by punishing our motion capture artists in the suit. Luckily we have plenty of padding and other things like that. But we had a lot of fun with just sort of finding ways to really kind of take Deadpool out, so he can reset. It was a good time.
I think for me, there's a lot of moments, but one I remember in particular, and it kind of just speaks to like the how in tune the team was with Deadpool and our desire to just let people do whatever feels natural. People have seen in some of our trailers, we've shown a character called Gugum, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a place in the game where you have to feed him some meat, and you acquire meat by defeating enemies. And I had the meat in my hands, and I was like, why isn't this a weapon? Like meat should be a weapon. And everybody was like, we should totally do it. So everybody got really into it, and we made the meat like hit people. You could use them like they return to your hand. I called them meat maracas for a while because you can have two in
Uh-huh.
your hands and just drum on people.
Yeah.
And the VFX team was like, it should squish when you're hitting people. We should have like little blood splatters. And
Hmm.
the other team was like, oh yeah, we're gonna make that. Like everybody gets into it. So whenever, and this kind of speaks to like the game as a whole. Whenever the team would find something like that, we do
Mm-hmm.
our best to try to put it in the game because we're like, if we think this is funny and if we're having fun with that, players will as well. So every time one of us would think of something like that, we try to do our best to put it in the game. And there's tons of those examples. Like we've put so many things in the game because of those conversations or just stuff that felt intuitive
Yeah.
to us. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just a really fond memory of seeing everybody rally around like what out of context like sounds like a stupid, very small thing, but actually some people are gonna have a lot of fun with it.
No, no, I think that gets to the heart of like design and game direction, production philosophy that like you should build the game you want to play, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
for sure.
And then let's talk a little bit about design specifically. What sources did you look to for your design inspiration?
So Deadpool's an interesting game. In theory, we shouldn't be doing what we're doing in VR because it's very risky. We're moving a lot, we're
Mm-hmm.
jumping a lot, we're doing acrobatics, but this is not Twisted Pixel's first VR game. So we're putting a lot of experience behind the title. We got really good at knowing how much we can move the camera, how much we need to dampen movement, how much speed is too much speed. We got really good at it. So we're putting a lot of that into a game that you don't normally see in VR. So, but we wanted to be that game. We wanted to be a game that mixes traversal with melee, with range combat, with explosives. We wanted players to be able to go around the environment with as much liberty as they care to have. And, I say it that way. You can go around just walking pretty much everywhere, minus some of the traversal puzzles in the game. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, if you want to slide around, jump on walls, dive over enemies, like slide underneath big enemies and just like slash their bellies with your swords, you can do all sorts of crazy things. So really, it allows you a ton of freedom, but it also
Mm-hmm.
doesn't force it on you. So we really looked at other games that kind of have that sort of vibe where you're kind of set loose in your environment. You're given tools to play with, and you can combine those tools any way that you'd like. So that's kind of where most of our inspiration came from, and just wanting to have all of that wrapped into a super funny Deadpool wrapper, which is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely fitting Twisted Pixel's sensibilities and
Yeah,
types of games that we like to make.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of that freedom, I know some VR games there's the option to play seated versus standing in a full room scale environment. Is that an option with Deadpool VR or is it fully standing
absolutely
only?
free. Yeah, we wanted to support as many accessibility options as we could with Deadpool. So you
Nice.
can 100% play it seated. In fact, in the game, there is a weapon that you can grab from your back, but we have a holster configuration built into the menu. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
seated, or if you just don't have a good range of motion to reach all the way behind your back, you can customize where you're going to be grabbing your pistols,
Oh,
your
nice.
swords, to whatever's most comfortable for you as a player. So yeah, it's supported seating, standing, but also for people that are a little bit sensitive with VR games. We supported a lot of options, fully customizable controls. We can bring in vignetting as an option that will
Mm-hmm.
tunnel vision. That helps a lot when moving. Snap turning as an option. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a big list of options that we wanted to work in there. Like Phil said, having worked on several VR games before this one, we do have a bit of experience with knowing what's comfortable and what's a good way to get a full action-packed game in front of a player.
Yeah. I remember that like tunneling from I think it was Eagle Flight, like way back in the day from Ubisoft, I think. And you mentioned, this isn't Twisted Pixel's first foray into VR. Are there any specific lessons learned from previous titles that you brought into this project? And if so, could you talk a little bit about those?
I think some of the things that really come to mind are, and they sound simple, but like when you're moving the camera, like if players not controlling the camera themselves, there's a very specific range of speed that you can have for people to be comfortable. And we've kind of dialed that in, and it's things like that that we're applying in this game so that people can feel as comfortable as possible. We really want people to look at Deadpool and be like, either you love VR and you're going to jump into it, or you love Deadpool but you haven't played VR. We want everybody to be comfortable. So all these little things, and they sound small individually, but you put them together, that's what makes the game comfortable. When we're jumping, we know how much we can tilt the camera. So not just speed, but also the amplitude of movement. Like those are things that we've learned that we've applied in this game. And they're things that you have to do a lot of trial and error to figure out. So we're really lucky that we've had so many opportunities to learn. So this is really a culmination of many years of expertise put together.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. In addition to that, we also try to design combat to where it's very clear who you're fighting against. So we use cell
Mm-hmm.
shading art style in here, and we light the characters, and we design their behaviors to really want them to be in front of you if possible, so that you're not getting hit from the sides or behind
That's
and
right.
being confused where you're getting attacked from. We keep a lot of focus. We know where the headset is in world
Mm-hmm.
space, and so we make sure that that's going to be comfortable, clear to the player as they're fighting through encounters in the game.
That's actually a really good segue to my next question, which is how did you settle on the overall art direction and animation style? I know you mentioned cell shading, but kind of what factors came into play? The technical limitations of a standalone headset, for example.
Yeah,
Yeah, just curious how you went about that.
sure. Yeah. And definitely building on what I just said, we did want to steer enemies to be in front of you. What that does is allows, excuse me, it allows you to get a lot of enemies on screen at the same time, but also to not get too noisy with the cell shading. So they stand out, they pop. We
Mm-hmm.
wanted the style to feel very, I mean, obviously you want to feel like you're in a comic book, but at the
Right.
same time, you're in VR, it's first person experience, so it needs to feel realistic too. So we made sure that the hands feel very natural when you're doing different gestures and grabbing things. The hands are the main character in the game, right? So we wanted
Mm-hmm.
that to feel very natural. And then the animation style, we wanted to also sort of find a middle ground between very realistic movements, but also exaggerated comic book poses and things like that. So we
Mm-hmm.
tried to balance that out to just whatever felt right, and that's what we landed on.
Awesome.
Definitely strong comic book influence,
Yeah.
and Deadpool is a violent superhero, so
Oh
he
yeah.
he gets into things, and
Yeah.
to be able to do things like hands regenerating and limbs getting lopped off, like we needed that to be relatively. It's always weird to say that way. It's kind of lighthearted, like it's
Right.
cartoony in a way, so it's not overwhelming. Like and Deadpool's laughing, the enemies have exaggerated reactions. It's a lot of things that we can do because we have a cartoony style and allows us to
Mm-hmm.
keep it relatively light, within that kind of content. So for us, that was really important. And Matt touched on it, but it making those choices also lets us do a lot with what we can do with the headset. So we're really pushing the 3 and the 3S to the maximum. I mean, we're
Hmm.
we're getting every inch out of performance that we can out of those platforms.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of like the Deadpool and Wolverine film that came out fairly recently, like that opening scene where there's so much carnage, but
Hmm.
it's
Oh
just
yeah.
so over the top with the choreography and the
Uh-huh.
soundtrack that like you have to laugh,
Absolutely.
rather than being overwhelmed with like this is mayhem.
Hmm.
Um, how about any technical challenges that you came across while you were developing, and whether that had to do with a mobile chipset? As you said, lots of time and thought and effort went into accessibility, but just curious if there were any rough patches for you, and if so, how did you overcome those obstacles?
When you're playing with limitations, there's always going to be places where you have to reevaluate what you're doing. So as we were developing the game, for example, we tried to nail down how many enemies we could have at the same time. And when you balance things a certain way, how many enemies can attack at the same time, how many do range versus melee. There's a lot of things that come into it. So if, one day we go, actually, we can't use the number we thought we were going to have, we're going to need to cut that down by two to make sure that we're keeping the right frame rate, that the game is performant, then you kind of have to reevaluate those things. And because I was saying before, like we're trying so hard to push every inch of performance we can out of the headset,
Mm-hmm.
those conversations happen frequently. So even though we didn't completely have to change the direction for the game, sometimes these things would come up, and then we'd have to make some trade-offs. So some aspects of the game would get rebalanced or reevaluated so that we can maintain performance. And it's especially true because typically the gameplay comes in a little bit before we have like final art, final lighting, and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
So when you put everything together, then we have to reevaluate. So I think the biggest challenge is to keep the vision clear, concise, to keep it to what you want it to be, but also be flexible so that we can make sure that all the aspects of the game can be brought to the same level of quality. And I think the more you have limitations with your platform, the more this becomes a thing. Um, I will say though, limitations aside, what we're doing with the game looks amazing. I, wouldn't feel ashamed of putting that beside other games that might even come out on console or PC. The game looks
Mm-hmm.
great. The style is clean. The performance is really good. The gameplay is fun. So I think we did an awesome job within the limitations.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of our systems and pipelines evolved, as we wanted to, like Phil said, put together this AAA title that you can pit up against anything else, and
Mm-hmm.
not, have virtual reality be anything limiting in the development process. It actually enhances our experience with the game.
Right. Speaking of, we don't talk about this as much these days as we did in the earlier days of VR, but what is it about Marvel's Deadpool VR that just makes it native to the medium? Why does this game need to be in VR versus on a traditional flat screen console?
Yeah, for me, real quick, and then, and then I'll let
Mm-hmm.
you go with a more detailed answer, Phil. But I think just on a high level, to be Deadpool, to feel like you're
Right.
Deadpool, to hear him in your head, to do what he's going to do, and to have such a good time doing it.
Yeah, the fourth wall breaking is a really
Mm-hmm.
big one because Deadpool is very aware that he's in a video game. So sometimes he'll be talking to the villains in the game, or he might talk to the player because he
Uh-huh.
knows that the player is controlling him.
Right.
And in VR, there's that relationship where you're both sharing the same head at the same time. Or there's even moments in the game where Deadpool will like leave his body and turn around and talk to you, be like, "Hey, I need you to do this right now, because otherwise I'm gonna be really annoyed." And then he kind of scoots back in, the player's body. It's really fun, and you can only really do that in VR with that same level of immersiveness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it a little bit before too, but it's the freedom. It's the ability to just move your hands around the way you want, to look wherever you want. Like, we're not controlling your experience as much as we would normally in a console game, which would be very directed, especially in a narrative linear game. So Deadpool is a perfect character for VR. He really is. I
Hmm.
think it's a great, great fit.
Yeah. That's interesting, the idea of having him come out of his body and turn around and face you.
Hmm.
Like, I could see that being really helpful for wayfinding and if a player was just getting hung up on a particular part of the game. Um, I'm curious what kind of fan and community response you've seen, whether, demoing and playtesting the game, showing it off at different conventions. What has that been like?
Yeah, I'm super excited that it's been
Yeah.
overwhelmingly positive. We've
Mm-hmm.
shown it at two game conventions, Summer Games Fest and Gamescom over the summer, and everybody that played the demo just had so much fun. We would hear people laughing out loud as they would see certain things happen, like for example, if their arms were growing back after being
Uh-huh.
dismembered, and just real Deadpool moments, and you could know like what they were experiencing, and they would just have a great time. And so yeah, it was a ton of fun to see all the positive response from everybody that actually got to get hands on with the game and play it. In addition to that, we've seen some great, write-ups and press,
Mm-hmm.
come out since then. It's been really making us feel good about our launch coming up next week.
That's awesome.
I agree with Matt. Like, it's been a really good response. We can always see like people take off their headset after playing our demo and they're just grinning, and
Hmm.
they
Right.
can't wait to tell us like, "I didn't think I could do something, and then I did, and it totally worked, and that was awesome." And we're balancing a lot of different elements, and I think people are really loving the balance. Deadpool talks all the time,
Mm-hmm.
which sometimes in games that can get grating if a character talks all the time, but Deadpool has something interesting or original to say about just about everything. He's not just repeating systemic lines over and
Right.
over.
Hmm.
He's talking about what's going on, and that changes depending on the levels. So combining that with the fact that the mechanics in the game have a lot of diversity, a lot of flexibility. People get in the game and are like, "I didn't know if it was going to work together," and we've heard this many times, and they go, "But it totally does, and I had fun, and I can't wait to play it some more."
Mm-hmm.
Um, Whenever you're demoing a game, like, you're always going to get some people that love the game, some people are like, it's not necessarily for me, but and this is rare, but this is honest with Deadpool. The vast majority of people, like, it's like 99% of people that played the game had a really good time, or like, "I want to play this," or they were telling us like, "I'm gonna get a headset because now that I've played this, I want to get into VR." So
Yeah.
tremendously positive. It's been awesome. Can't wait for people to play next week.
Hmm.
That's great. Did either of you happen to make it out to Connect this year?
No, I did not.
No,
No.
we had to misconnect. We were too busy finishing Deadpool.
That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask if you hit up the chimichanga truck, but
We did see
apparently
pictures
not.
and
But
it looked
We saw,
amazing.
yeah,
yeah,
Yes.
we
it was
saw
fun.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. And then curious, you've put your heart and soul into this game. It's been like a 4+ year journey. If people take one thing away from the game, what do you hope that would be and why?
That's a
Yeah.
tough question.
Yeah. I think for me, I'll say it's a game that you could play however you want to play, and have fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game that supports all styles of combat. If you want to get in with enemies up close and get creative with swords, grenades, grappling enemies, dismembering them, pretty much the sky's the limit with how you want to play. Or if you want to sit back and shoot just from your pistols, you'll fight your way, through the game nice and, at a safe distance. That's totally supported as well. So it's the kind of game we wanted. And like we talked about accessibility options earlier as well, to where just everybody can jump into this game and have a good time the way they want to play a video game.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's Deadpool's a game that's for everybody that likes good video games, that like Deadpool, that like VR. It's for everybody. If any of those apply to you, you're gonna find something fun in there. Like Matt said, it's accessible. Just because it's a first-person shooter doesn't mean It's really, really difficult. We have plenty of difficulty modes. If you want to make it super hard, you can. You can make it super easy. And it says yes to you. That game will give you as much freedom as you're willing to put into it. If you really put yourself in the mindset of being Deadpool, and you're like, what would Deadpool do? Would he throw his own arm at an enemy? Yes, he would do that. Would Deadpool throw his own guns just to stun someone? Absolutely, he would. So I think if people are into it, they will have an absolutely great time. But if they want to play it like a more traditional shooter, they can do that too. So the game has tons of opportunity, and I say this a lot, but it's a game that says yes to the player. We mean it. It's one of our core values. It's represented in the game. I think people are going to have a blast with it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And then, at the risk of embarrassing myself, which I can do some creative editing if I need to, I think Twisted Pixel is the studio behind Wilson's Heart. Is that right?
That is correct, yes.
Were you guys around in those days, or are you newer to the studio?
I'm personally slightly newer to the studio. I joined
Okay.
right after Wilson's Heart, so
Okay.
yeah. But that
I
was
am
one
as
of the
well.
reasons that I wanted to be with Twisted Pixel and work on games with them, because that game was immersive and amazing. It was really one of the first VR games that opened my eyes to VR.
Right, because the reason I asked was that whole ethos of say yes to the player. If I recall correctly, Wilson's Heart, it was the first game that really understood if there's a notebook on the table, I should be able to pick it up and thumb through it, even if it has nothing to do with the objectives of the game. And there's just something really magical about that you can only have in VR.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so this has been great. We've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything I didn't ask or anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to get in there, make sure that people hear about?
We have more Marvel villains that we can't even talk about that people haven't seen in trailers. So I think if people have seen a little bit of our videos and some of our levels, like we haven't even shown everything. So there's even more content for people to discover. I know we weren't being specific about how long the game is, but it's a chunky game. Like people
Right.
are going to be pleasantly surprised. So I think I just can't wait. I wish we could talk about it right now
I
because
know.
I'm so excited about it. But when the game comes out, we'll finally be able to talk about it. And I can't wait for people to go, I had no idea I would run into,
Right.
certain
Exactly.
characters. And I'll be like, yes, that's awesome. The game's also chock full of Easter eggs. If people are big fans of Marvel, like I would say, go around and look at everything. Just in the first level, we're on a shield helicarrier. If you go down a corridor, you'll see like a plaque that shows, oh, this is Maria Hill's office, which is cool. It's a known place, right? So,
Yeah.
but that's everywhere in the game. So if people are big fans of Marvels, like go around, take your time, look at things. There's just so many of them. So yeah, can't wait for people to find all those things and post about it.
Yeah. And one of the other things we haven't gone very deep with is the cast and acting. So we've mentioned
Right.
Neil Patrick Harris is the voice of Deadpool, and John Leguizamo is the voice of Mojo, who's one of the
Right.
primary characters in the game as well. Several other characters are cast by people that you're going to recognize their voices, and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And the writing in the game is really exciting. And so, we really look forward to hearing people have a good
Cast
time.
is crazy. When
Yeah.
when people see the amount of known celebrities that we have in the game, they're going to be like, wow,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had no idea. Yeah.
I mean, Wilson's Heart was like an ensemble cast, but even that was so impressive for that era of VR. So I can only imagine what you guys have cooked up. And yeah, we talked about Lady Deadpool a little bit, and I saw the tease for her in the story trailer and would have asked, who voices her, but I assume you just can't talk about it. So that's why I didn't.
Yep.
Awesome.
Those are all November 18th answers.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, maybe we'll have to schedule a follow-up.
Sounds good.
Oh, this
Absolutely.
has been so much fun. Thank you both so much. Yeah, I'll go ahead and let you go, but thanks again. And to anybody watching, make sure you download and play Marvel's Deadpool VR on MetaQuest.